I'm here to give you some insights about sort of the background behind my current research and my current teaching as well. So it's going to be about storytelling, about the body, and about medicine. And like all good research at the university, in academia today, it starts with a vintage board game. I'm sure a lot of you recognize this. This is called Operation. This is the game called Operation. It was invented in 1965. A lot of us have played with it as kids. It's still around today, I think. You remember what you had to do? You sort of had to pull out the poor guys like one bone at a time or one organ at a time, really carefully. Otherwise, the buzzer would go off and his red nose would light up. It was really fun. Now, what I want you to think along with me today is how a banal game like Operation foreshadows how medicine is transforming the art of storytelling today. And also that this transformation is only increasing as we speak and will only increase in the coming years and decades. What transformation am I talking about? First, you'll have to consider this with me. We all need a story to our life. We all want to feel whole. We all strive to live our days in mindfulness. And as a matter of fact, this is how we generally will define health. Think of it. Health, to live a healthy life is to live a balanced life inside a balanced body. That's what it is for most people. Now, people often forget how health and storytelling are actually much alike. We trust that we possess a unified and whole life story the same way that we trust to possess a unified and whole body. A body that's in sync with our life story. We're not all writers, but deep down, I'm convinced that we all think that we possess our own personal biography. I'm going to go ahead and use that word. It's really important. We all think that we possess our own biography. This biography, it hums in the background, in the back of our daily life. It provides us meaning to make sense of yesterday and to dream of tomorrow. And our body incarnates it for us. Our body, if you will, is the public face of our personal biography. But in the game Operation, to go back to my main source of research, in the game Operation, nothing is balanced. Nothing is whole. It's when the It's when the buzzer goes off that the players will throw their hands in the air. That everybody will get a good laugh and that we'll move on to the next turn. Think of it this way now. It's when our body comes at a crossroad that it really begins to exist for us. It's when our organs fail, when our limbs hurt, or when this whole thing overperforms, that it really exists for us. Language, our language, functions in this way. There's a location in our body for every emotion in the language. We say that our heart breaks when we lose someone that we love. We have gut feelings about things, about situations, about people, or about crowds. That's what I was telling you about. I have a great gut. You're giving a great vibe to my gut is what you're doing. I had butterflies in my stomach before stepping on this stage. Even exhaustion or pleasure, which I think everyone would think are overwhelming feelings, even they can be traced back to locations inside our body. Our eyes are worn out, our feet will hurt, will be exhausted, our lungs will not have the same capacity to, breathe in and breathe out, to channel the air, and so on and so forth. We are not even aware of all the contacts between our body and its environment. Like right now, you're all sitting there, you're all listening to me, hopefully, and yet at the same time your body is experiencing countless other contacts. Countless other biological processes are happening right now, not just the digestion of your dinner, but also countless other molecular interactions are taking place inside your body as I speak to you. In a way, if you want to look at it this way, and I'm inviting you to do so, I'm speaking to millions of you. So the lesson is clear. It's been there all along. We strive, we believe to have a life that looks like a line, a straight line in time, or an ascending curve, if you prefer. But our body tells us otherwise. We physically are made out of different times and of different potential stories. My organs can potentially be replaced or enhanced. I may not take them all to my grave. Maybe, in a way, the stories I engineer and I tell about my own body is what holds it together in my mind for me to, have a stronger sense of self. What if you now were to focus on those stories about your body, if only for a minute? What would your life start to look like? I think the word biography now seems like quite the narrow concept, which is why I think we need new templates, new models of storytelling for the stories that lie dormant inside our body. We need to re-engineer, we need to reboot biomedical storytelling. I was trained as a literature scholar, but I've always been that kind of scholar who felt a bit constrained within the confines of his discipline. As far as I can remember in my own life, I've always been breaking things down or ideas down into smaller components. That's not necessarily a quality, mind you, but it clearly led me somewhere. The thing is that I only realized about, 5 years ago, where it was actually leading me. 5 years ago, and much like Jared Smith told us about in his heartbreaking story about his sister's cancer, I too got that dreaded phone call that we all fear. To make matters worse, it had to be on the day where I had set my mobile on a new experimental ringtone, the one that goes like a duck. So I got woken up by quacks at 4 a.m. On the other end was a resident doctor in the emergency ward. My dad had just passed away of a massive heart attack. It came as a shock, as it would for anybody. I had to make sense of it. Now, being who I am, in the following days or weeks, I inquired. I went online. I tried to know more about what happened beyond, the heart attack. It turns out there was another story, or if you prefer, there was another level to that story. The heart attack of my dad had been caused by what is called a coronary thrombosis, which is a clotting of the blood vessels in the heart itself. It had gone on for 3 days prior to his actual demise, or maybe even longer. During those 3 days, my dad had merely been complaining about heartburns, general fatigue, an upset stomach. My mom did not worry. She had no way to know that from the standpoint of his heart, my dad's demise was already in motion before her very eyes. I had no way to know either. I spoke to him over Skype, as it happens in the days prior. The face, the eyes, the gaze, the voice on that screen were my dad's. But the body on that same screen was secretly coming to an end before my very eyes. My dad spent 3 days dying amidst his daily life. He had had a great life, don't worry about that, for 82 years. But at the very end, his biography veered off. From the standpoint of his art, that's what took over. It's his heart story that took over the final 3 days. In the final hours, if you want to know, is the story of his lungs that took over, because that's what happens with a coronary thrombosis. They filled with fluid, mostly water, couldn't breathe anymore. We all know people who left us this way. It's a banal story, and yet, looking at the minute elements of the story itself with the body, it's always a unique story. So that was a lot of doom and gloom, but that's not my point at all. Actually, I do not think that this is sad. Not at all. If anything, looking into this literature, learning more, getting into this mindset of the storytelling and the body helped me to process the thing and made me love my dad even more for the final 3 days of his life. Because when the body fails, stories prevail. When the body breaks down, stories actually multiply. And you know what? This is what the development of medicine has been telling us for the past 200 years or so. Think, for example, of the early symptomatology of the 18th and 19th century, the guessing game of having to work with only signs and symptoms to figure out what was going on with the body. Think of organ transplant. Think of the decoding of the human genome. Think of neuropsychiatry today and the relative dissolution of the self into synaptic connections or behavioral patterns. And now to end this, think about the new theory of microbiota ecology, which tells us in a nutshell that our body is host to billions of other microbodies that help us live. Bacteria, viruses, you name it. We are re-engineering biomedical storytelling based on these things. But the thing is that, not to get political about it, it's a reality. The thing is that it's also happening in your mobile phones. We are talking about technology now. And just to wrap this up, I'm going to make you think about what's in your pocket. Think of the technology of mobile healthcare. You all have it on your mobile phone. Your mobile phones now have sensors, most of them have sensors, that will register all kinds of data about your body. They will register your footsteps, your heartbeat, and whatnot. This data has the potential to be sent directly, as you probably know, over to healthcare providers or insurance providers in heartbeat. It will only increase in the future. This is where we're going. But this is what you have to keep in mind. This is what we all have to keep in mind. This data only travels in bits and pieces. We have always been multitudes. But now, we're filling up the airwaves with these multitudes. We're filling up the skies with these multitudes. We're filling up the spaces between us with these multitudes. What happens to the idea of a healthy you amidst all this? Yourself and its health will have to be reconstructed within those clouds of information today and in the future, in the near future. This is why we need storytelling more than ever, to literally keep track of ourselves in this brave new world of healthcare. The age-old question, who am I, today, has become, how many am I? The other age-old question, how much time do I have left today, has become, how many stories do my body still contain? What we call fear, sadness, or even despair, is when we lose sight of this. What we call joy or serenity is when we choose to embrace it. And what we call self-care or self-respect may just be what hold all these things together in the form of stories for others to see and eventually to love. Thank you.